Ever feel like you're working harder just to pay more for less freedom? Utility bills climbing, HOA telling you what color mailbox is acceptable, zoning boards acting like mini dictators over your own property? What if I told you there are 5 states in 2025 where off-grid living is practically beginner-friendly, where you can buy land for under $5,000 per acre, escape the regulatory circus, and actually live on your own terms? I'm talking places where the county inspector's probably a guy named Earl who drives a pickup and minds his own business. These states rolled out the welcome mat for people who want solar panels, rainwater collection, and neighbors who wave instead of calling code enforcement. But here's the thing. While everyone's fighting over overpriced suburbs and HOA hellholes, these freedom zones are sitting there waiting. Let's dive in before the bureaucrats figure out what we're up to. Before we escape to Freedom Land, smash that like button because algorithms love rebellion almost as much as you do. And hit subscribe unless you want to miss out on more places where government overreach goes to die. Picture this. A cabin tucked into the Missouri Ozarks, surrounded by nothing but trees, clear springs, and blessed silence from neighbors who think your business is their business. Welcome to rural Missouri, where the government still remembers that freedom used to mean something, and where you can actually buy land without needing a second mortgage or a trust fund. We're talking about real dirt cheap land here, folks. In rural Missouri counties, you can find recreational and undeveloped land for under $5,000 per acre, sometimes way under. While your old neighbors are paying HOA fees that could fund a small army, you could own actual acres, where the only bylaws are the ones you write yourself. Missouri rolled out the red carpet for homesteaders decades ago and never bothered to roll it back up. Rural counties like Ozark and Douglas have zoning enforcement that's about as aggressive as a sleepy bloodhound. These places figured out that people who want to live off-grid aren't exactly the troublemaking type. You're not throwing raves or operating meth labs. You're growing tomatoes and reading books by solar power. The state gets it. You can set up solar panels without some inspector named Chad showing up with a clipboard and an attitude problem. Rainwater collection? Go nuts. Garden wherever you want? It's your land. The bureaucrats are too busy dealing with actual problems to worry about whether your chicken coop matches the neighborhood aesthetic. Here's how it works in practice. You find yourself a nice parcel in rural Missouri, maybe 10 or 20 acres of timberland that averaged around $5,073 per acre for recreational use this year. You'll need road access, which usually exists, and you'll want to drill a well and install a septic system, which are actual necessities, not government shakedowns. Then you set up your solar battery system, maybe some rainwater catchment if the county allows it, and start growing your own food like humans did for thousands of years before grocery stores convinced us we were helpless. Now let's be honest about the trade-offs because this isn't some fantasy where everything's perfect and the internet works like magic. You're getting freedom, but you're also getting dirt roads that turn into mud soup when it rains hard. Your internet might be slower than dial-up on a bad day. County enforcement varies wildly, so you might still deal with septic regulations or well permits, depending on which bureaucrat woke up cranky that morning. And winter still happens in Missouri, which means you better have a solid plan for heating your place, especially if you're not 25 anymore and your tolerance for being cold dropped somewhere around your 50th birthday. But here's the emotional payoff that makes it all worth it. Picture yourself drinking morning coffee on your own porch, watching the sun come up over land that belongs to you with no utility bills climbing every month like they're training for the Olympics, no HOA president knocking on your door to complain about your garden gnomes, no city inspector measuring your grass with a ruler. You're back in control of your own life, living on your own terms, the way Americans used to live before committees started running everything. Missouri gives you that sweet spot of accessibility and affordability. But if you're thinking those winter months sound like more trouble than they're worth, and you'd rather trade snow shovels for sweet tea, then let's head south to a place where the weather's gentler and the government's just as hands-off. Trade those Missouri winters for Tennessee's rolling green hills, where the government still remembers that minding your own business used to be a virtue, not a loophole. Tennessee quietly became one of the most off-grid friendly states in America, while everyone was busy arguing about everything else. It's entirely legal to live off the grid in rural Tennessee, which puts it ahead of states that treat rainwater collection like you're stealing from the cloud gods. Sure, some urban areas might hassle you about hookups, but we're not talking about living in downtown Nashville. We're talking about the parts of Tennessee where your closest neighbor might be a family of deer, and the biggest traffic jam involves a tractor going 20 miles per hour down a country road. Tennessee hit the sweet spot between affordable land and livable climate. You're getting longer growing seasons without the brutal winters that make Missouri feel like survival training. Land prices stay reasonable compared to the coastal madness where a parking space costs more than a house used to. You can find rural parcels where the county officials have better things to do than measure your setbacks with surveying. Equipment. The soil's good, the rainfall's decent, and you can actually grow food year-round if you know what you're doing. Solar panels work great with all that southern sunshine, and many counties don't throw tantrums about rainwater collection systems. Here's the practical reality. You pick a rural county where zoning enforcement is about as common as snow in July. You'll still need to navigate septic and sewage requirements because even Tennessee draws the line somewhere, but it's manageable bureaucracy, not the regulatory circus you'll find in states that treat property ownership like a privilege they can revoke. You can set up solar power, drill a well, raise chickens, grow a garden, and live like humans did before someone decided we all needed permission slips for everything. The challenges? Tennessee summers can get hotter and stickier than a church potluck in August if you're over 60 and your relationship with heat and humidity went south years ago. You better plan for cooling and ventilation that doesn't involve standing in front of an open refrigerator. Some counties, especially near the bigger towns, still enforce building codes and utility hookup requirements because they never met a revenue stream they didn't like. And while Tennessee land is cheaper than California crazy, it's still going to cost you real money up front for the infrastructure that makes off-grid living comfortable instead of miserable. But here's what makes it worth it. You're trading HOA tyranny for morning coffee on a porch overlooking hills that actually roll instead of subdivisions that all look identical. You've got enough growing season to feed yourself, enough sunshine to power yourself, and enough space to breathe without some committee telling you how to do it. You're living free in a place that still believes freedom means something. If you love that idea, but want even more space, fewer people, and the kind of wide-open country that makes you feel like the last person on Earth, then let's head to Big Sky territory where the buffalo used to roam, and the government interference is still pretty thin on the ground. Now we're talking about real frontier living. Montana is where you go when you want to see what America looked like before someone decided every square inch needed to be regulated, subdivided, and turned into a strip mall. Big Sky Country isn't just a tourism slogan, it's a way of life where your nearest neighbor might be 20 miles away and perfectly happy to keep it that way. Montana gives you the kind of wide open space that makes you feel like you can breathe again, where the government is too busy dealing with actual wilderness to micromanage your chicken coop. The land situation in Montana is unique because you're dealing with real remote property, not suburban lots pretending to be country. Development pressure is practically non-existent in the rural areas because most people can't handle the isolation and the climate. That means land stays affordable and regulations stay light. Montana just got their water rights situation sorted out too. Governor signed House Bill 441 in July 2025, which finally aligned all those provisional water rights into actual legal decrees. Translation, you can buy land and actually know what water rights come with it, instead of playing legal roulette every time you want to dig a well. Here's how Montana works in practice. You find raw land with road access, good solar exposure, and access to water, whether that's a well, a stream, or both. You're going full off-grid here, folks. Solar panels, wind power, maybe a generator for backup, your own well and septic system, and if you're lucky, stream or creek access with the proper permits. Montana allows limited well water appropriation without jumping through major permit hoops. But if you want to use surface water from streams or lakes, you need a state-issued water right. It's bureaucracy, but it's straightforward bureaucracy, not the kind designed to drive you insane. The challenges are real and you better take them seriously. Montana winters don't mess around. We're talking serious cold, serious snow, and roads that might not get plowed until spring if you're remote enough. If you're pushing 70 and your idea of roughing it is staying at a Holiday Inn without room service, Montana might not be your speed. Medical services can be hours away. Road maintenance is whatever you make it. Your infrastructure costs for heating and insulation are going to be higher because Mother Nature takes no prisoners up there. But here's the emotional payoff that makes Montana worth it for the right person. You're living in the wide open under skies so big they make you dizzy. You've got fewer neighbors than most people have houseplants. The regulations are thin because there's nobody around to regulate. You've turned your back on the system more completely than anywhere else we've talked about. You're not just off-grid, you're off everything. If Montana sounds too much like wilderness survival training and you'd prefer your freedom with a side of reasonable weather and maybe a Dairy Queen within driving distance, then let's head south to a place that's got big land, big sky, and big sunshine. When you hear Texas, you probably think Dallas traffic jams and Houston sprawl. But rural Texas is a completely different animal. We're talking about a massive land base with more affordable acres than you can shake a stick at. Over 230 sunny days per year in most regions, and rural counties that still believe in the radical idea that your property is actually yours. Texas has more off-grid properties for sale than practically any other state, which tells you everything you need to know about how friendly they are to people who want to unplug from the system and plug into real life. The numbers work in your favor here. You can find remote rural land in West Texas or the Hill Country for under $3,000 per acre in some cases, which is less than most people spend on a used car. With all that sunshine beating down, solar panel installation is practically a no-brainer. Your panels will be working overtime while your electric bill becomes a distant memory. Rainwater harvesting is legal in many areas, which is revolutionary thinking in a country where some states treat collecting rain like stealing from nature's bank account. Rural counties often have minimal building codes because they figured out that people moving to the middle of nowhere aren't planning to build McMansions or strip malls. Here's how Texas works in practice. You find yourself a nice chunk of land in a remote county where the sheriff knows everybody by name and the biggest excitement is the annual barbecue cook-off. You set up your solar system, which will work better than anywhere else we've talked about thanks to all that relentless Texas sunshine. Water is still going to be your main challenge. Most folks rely on wells or rainwater collection, and sometimes both, because Texas weather can swing from drought to flood faster than a politician changes positions. The growing season is long enough to feed yourself year-round if you know what you're doing and the heat doesn't kill your enthusiasm for gardening. The challenges are real, and they're bigger than the state itself. Texas is huge, which means climate varies wildly depending on where you land. Some areas are drier than a church sermon. Others get more rain than they know what to do with. Summer heat can be intense enough to make you question your life choices, especially if you're past the age where sweating was considered fun. Water rights and well drilling still need to be handled properly, and remote land often means higher infrastructure costs. Some rural counties still enforce septic codes or minimum habitation requirements because even Texas has limits on how Wild West they'll let things get. But picture this. You're sitting on your own land under that famous big Texas sky, watching your solar panels soak up sunshine, while your nearest neighbor is far enough away that you can't hear their leaf blower. You've got minimal government oversight, maximum personal freedom, and you've finally made the leap from complaining about the system to actually leaving it behind. For our final stop, we're heading to the land of enchantment, where the desert meets affordability and the government mostly stays out of your business. Welcome to the land of enchantment, where high desert freedom meets wide open spaces and the government mostly remembers to mind its own business. New Mexico is the final frontier for people who want maximum space for minimum money, where off-grid land listings average around $4,379 per acre, and the nearest bureaucrat might be a 3-hour drive away. This is where you go when you want to live so off the grid that the grid forgot you existed, surrounded by nothing but desert, mountains, and skies so big they make Texas look crowded. New Mexico quietly became one of the easiest states for off-grid living while everyone was busy arguing about everything else. You can find remote parcels where zoning enforcement is about as common as snow in July, and building code inspectors are mythical creatures that might exist somewhere but probably not in your county. The sunshine is abundant and relentless, which makes solar power practically mandatory and incredibly effective. You'll have enough solar energy to power your entire setup and probably half the county if there was anybody else around to share it with. Here's how New Mexico works in the real world. You buy remote land, check that you have legal access to water through wells, groundwater rights, or rainwater collection, then set up your solar system, water storage, and septic system like you're establishing a small country. Remote land often means long drives to town, fewer services, and the kind of climate that swings from blazing hot days to surprisingly cold nights, because desert weather doesn't believe in moderation. But here's where New Mexico gets tricky, and you better pay attention to this part. Water rights are strictly regulated because all water belongs to the public, and water rights are controlled by the Office of the State Engineer. This isn't Missouri, where you drill a well and call it good. You need to make absolutely sure your well or water source is completely legal before you buy anything, because discovering you don't have water rights after you've built your dream cabin is the kind of mistake that turns retirement into a nightmare. The isolation cuts both ways. It's fantastic when you want peace and quiet and nobody telling you what to do, but it's less fantastic when you need medical services, road maintenance, or just human contact. Some areas face extreme weather that makes homesteading genuinely challenging, not just inconvenient. Hot summers and cold nights, potential drought conditions, and the reality that when something breaks, you're fixing it yourself or driving hours to find someone who can. But here's the emotional payoff that makes New Mexico worth it. You're living in genuine enchantment, completely off the grid and completely on your own terms. No corporate overlords, no HOA presidents, no zoning committees with clipboards and attitudes. You've found the place where freedom still exists. So there you have it. 5 states where off-grid living in 2025 is completely realistic for beginners willing to do the work. Missouri with its affordable Ozark freedom, Tennessee's rolling hills and reasonable regulations, Montana's big sky wilderness for the truly committed, Texas with its massive land base and endless sunshine, and New Mexico's high desert enchantment where the government mostly forgets you exist. These aren't fantasy destinations. They're real places with real land at real prices that won't require you to mortgage your grandchildren's future. You don't have to keep paying the price of regulation, utility dependence, and shrinking freedom just because everyone around you accepted it as normal. You don't have to spend your retirement years watching HOA fees climb while your property rights disappear. These 5 states prove that you can make a change, even on a fixed or semi-fixed income, even if you're starting later in life than you planned. This isn't about roughing it or pretending you're 25 again. This is about reclaiming the kind of independence that used to be considered normal American living. If you're tired of feeling boxed in by zoning committees, frustrated by rising bills, and sick of asking permission to live on your own property, then this isn't just a daydream. It's a practical path forward. In the next video, we're diving deep into exactly how to pick the right parcel, what questions to ask the county before you buy, and how to budget for solar, water, and septic systems so you know what you're really getting into. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss it, because this information could change everything. Freedom isn't just an idea. It's a place. It's your property. It's your rules. Go claim it.